Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome to our first look at ARA, History Untold. It's been a great game so far. I've had a little bit of time to play it, about an hour at an Xbox event out in Los Angeles. So thanks to them for, flying me and many other people out to try this game and many other games like Avowed and also Little Nightmares 3 and much, much more. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this game and much more in the future, because we'll be comparing this game directly to, of course, Civilization 7 and many other games that are civilization builders. Now, immediately right at the surface, this game really does appear to be like Civilization, but quickly turns into something completely different as we have more regions to control and a lot more history to cover, as we can, in this game, cover history throughout history as one nation, right? We get to be one civilization, one nation, and guide our people to victory, whether or not that may be through military means. But the developers have made it so that way military is not really the intended way to win, but there are many other ways to do it too, through building masterpieces and palaces. And essentially think of like in Anno 1800, when you build your zoos or your museums, you can load those up with all sorts of different curiosities and art. And in this game, it's kind of the same thing. You can then win by having a lot of prestige, and nations can fail in earlier acts of the game. Like, for example, going from the, let's just call it the Stone Age up to the Bronze Age. If you are falling way behind, you basically get kicked out of the game. Now, right now, I'm showing you all of the nations that are currently available in this build for the game, which is releasing a little later in September. And it's going to be pretty good to be able to immediately jump into this one for some multiplayer and with some previous experience. Now, I played this for about an hour myself, and then I watched the developer and chatted with the developer, lead designer for this game, playing it and asking some questions too. And so obviously in a game like this, there's a lot of nations that are very powerful right at the start, during the very beginning, and then of course nations that are very powerful in later acts. So throughout time, you'll get some bonuses by having some different policies and things that can be taken advantage of a little later. Like, for example, Bismarck being, of course, more industrial. So when you get to the Iron Age specifically, you'll be able to use a lot more materials that you'd find out in the desert or near mountains. So things like copper deposits, iron deposits, that kind of thing. Now, immediately, some of the pro tips that we walked away with were, well, where you start actually kind of does matter quite a bit. So if you're starting out in a desert area, not near any sort of coastline or whatnot, you're going to immediately want to travel to find some fertile ground to then start farming. Now in this game too, there's a lot of different things here, like the different bonuses for their backgrounds, like disciplined, aggressive, persuasive, and practical. And these are interesting to pay attention to at the start of the game, or really how your playthrough will go. Like, for example, playing as, like, for example, the nation of Greece, you'll have a little bit more of a focus on maybe late game things like the, like the palaces and the masterpieces. And Germany's a little bit more industrialized. And I think right over the top of their description, it'll say, like, blood and iron, so things like conflict and smelting. That's who we're going to go with this time, although I would recommend for your first playthrough maybe playing as one of the more nations focused on agriculture and trade right at the beginning. But you can also see that there's ways to modify the difficulty of the game right from the start, and also modify the maps. And the developer did confirm that the game will launch without any sort of mod support, but that is their first intention, is to make it so that way players can make their own maps and then modify all of these nations to be either sub-factions of a nation or completely different nations too. An example being, you could take the Germans and immediately turn them into the Americans if you wanted to, or take Joan of Arc and turn her into a completely different character altogether. Like different stats, yet still be the same nation, that kind of thing. So very interesting for modifying the game to your liking, and multiplayer will be there as well. And cool thing for the map editor is that, it doesn't really play out like a hexagon-like game. It feels a little bit more like Hearts of Iron, both in its world map and also with how the kind of the things are divided, regions are divided too. So it's a little more free and wholesome to build. So you can put down some giant mountains and then put down a beautiful grass plain and then a river and then a coastline and make beautiful cities if you want to. The developers have every intention to make this a game that is not only fun to play but also fun to build in, kind of doing some fun sandbox stuff. So yeah, just going through all the settings here, things like setting ore and turn limits. And so yeah, clearly this game has a lot of internal settings to make the game perfect for your liking. So you can go ahead and set it up any way you'd like to.
The wheels turn once more.
Otto von
Iron
Bismarck.
Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, with a mind as sharp as a blade and a will as unyielding
All right.
as stone.
So we're going to be playing with the tutorial on, and this again is pre-recorded, and then meaning that I'm talking over this after recording it, so it's not live commentary. So we'll be going off on some rambling tangents, but I think this is important. One of the major concerns for a lot of you during our Civilization 7 video is that many of you, and including myself, aren't really sure if we'll be able to play as the same nation when going to other chapters. If you haven't seen it already before on the channel, we've covered Civilization 7 talking about the 3 different eras or chapters that they want you to go through, and being a little bit more like humankind, they want you to go from like the Egyptians to the Japanese to then like, let's say, the Chinese or something like that. They all of course have different benefits to them, and eventually they want you to create different civilizations on the ruins of previous ones, but in this game it'll be a little different than that. So here we have the different regions within kind of a, let's call it a county. I forget exactly all the terminology, but basically, there, it says right there, regions are broken into zones. So we're building a farm right on the zone there, where it looks to be most fertile, but it actually is broken down by taking a look back at the map and then seeing where you'll see like up to 4 like gold pieces for it being wealthy, 4 iron pieces or ingots for being rich with resources like minerals, and then of course there's food too. So 4 apples means that it's very fertile and is certainly an area that you need to settle ASAP. There's also predators on the map. Yeah, there's bears in this game. Great, all sorts of bears too, not just regular old bears, but there's polar bears and there's grizzly bears, and then of course you've got lions and saber-toothed tigers and Siberian tigers, all these crazy things that could really be a dangerous thing to move through. So kind of think of them as like barbarians. They're kind of neutral, but if you go near them, they'll attack. So if you try to settle a region there where there's a predator, then of course you're going to have a bad time. All the things that you'd expect for technology are here. So starting out with like researching grain storage and rope making, and doing things like seafaring to be able to cross large bodies of water, building guard towers and city walls. All that kind of research is there, and the scouting is also a big part of this game. And of course it has an auto scout feature, so a lot of you will sigh of relief for knowing that you don't have to really micromanage that very often. But it is good to keep an eye on them and see how far they get away, because exploration in this game is quite quick. Every turn you could explore a whole new region, and exploring a region, I think, kind of reveals the other unexplored regions. It'll show you what they look like and maybe some of their resources adjacent, so you don't have to go into every region in order to see what's there. But look at that. Very beautiful. A very good living, breathing world. And I've liked what I've seen of the cities and the world of this game so far. Although some of the troops and stuff, the combat is a little... of course, it's not total war. It is very much like how it is in Civilization 7. But it's certainly where I would expect it to be. I was expecting something different, but at the very least, it is where I thought it would be.
Speaker for the tribe meets with your emissary to inform you on their recent struggles. We are building a monument the likes of which the world has never seen. But our master builder has taken ill and is bedridden. His mind can't simply be replaced. Do you have a master builder?
Right, so here we have like neutral tribes that, just like in Civ, you can befriend, and there'll be benefits to doing so. If you, of course, are friendly with them, then there could be some benefits that you get towards research or maybe troops, or, well, they won't attack you, which is also good too. Or you could turn them against an enemy, and they could be a buffer between you and your actual cities. Now, another thing too in this game is I've noticed it takes a little while to build things, a few turns. But those turns can last for a while, because there is quite a bit of things to do here. Up on the right side here, we've got different projects that we can start. So that essentially is like building your basics within the city. So you can build your homes to expand the population, farms to feed your people, workshops to then build things to also help them to be more productive. So you can build a workshop, then tell them to build tools, and then you could, of course, supply that to your farms to then make them even more powerful. So it's a good idea to start with the basic farms first, then the workshop to then enhance the abilities of those, or your mines, or whatever else you got going on. We're going to continue to explore, and again, beautiful transitions between the different types of biomes. You got forested areas, desert areas. Some of the desert areas then turn into tundra of like a, you know, cold nature. But as you can see, we're in the desert here. And every time that I looked at everyone playing this game at the event, just peeking over, it seemed like everybody was starting in the arid region. And looking at the map editor, it seems like it's already set to that by default, so most people were kind of like starting in the desert. So I would certainly recommend a less arid or maybe a wet or more mild setting, so you can start kind of like to the areas of our right. Now, this game also allows you to pick different types of religions and also government types, so you can go down the monarchy tier, which will give you extra bonuses too, but those things won't be unlocked until later through technology. Over on the left side too, you see quality of life. It'll be important to keep that up, to keep everybody happy in your city, and then we can provide amenities in order to keep them happy too. Like, for example, you can stumble upon a bunch of old clay pots or wine or something like that and bring it to your city, but that'll only last for so long until all the feasts and people, you know, just consuming those goods. They're not infinite, they're finite, and of course you can make more, but finding them early helps to boost that happiness and helps you to grow your city. So lots of cool stuff to be able to find. Right now we're finding some out in the field, literally right now, resource caches that can then give us more building materials and more things for our cities to consume. And that is a very good thing, so especially food right at the beginning. But metals and other things will also be useful. Over on the left side you see that we have ourselves like food and some other things too. We'll go over that in a minute.
Continues in one's legacy. A military commander of unparalleled skill and bravery knew this to be true and requested that you honor his life through the construction of a library that would
So that's one of our first goals then, is to build a grand library. We could also build Stonehenge to get some advantages right at the start too. But going back to what I was mentioning, we have wealth, wood, and metal up there in the upper left corner. So that's what's most important right at the start of the game. And also clearing your territories of dangerous animals. I do believe, I may be mistaken, but I think also going on these glorious hunts where you can go out and train your military, they will actually level up from those, and then also you might be able to get some pelts from those too. So as you see a leader, if you settle a city close to their territory, they're going to get a little mad. They're not going to be too happy with you. So if you do that and they declare war on you, you could of course offer them some things for peace, like, hey, chill out, I got some you know, pelts here for you, and then they'll kind of calm down, back down, then you can bring up the military to smash them in return. Alright, so here we found a plow, and we're going to apply that to our farm, and there's other things that we can find or make ourselves to then increase the amount of harvest that these farms will give, and so we'll work on that over time. So the farm is complete, looks beautiful. I love how free it looks. It's not just like square, but it does look like the game attempted to try to keep the farm like within the actual the fertile region on the map, although you can see that it's like a region, a zone of 3, so we can actually improve that to 4, or 4 can be improved even further to like 5. You can eventually do irrigation, and so things all can be upgraded and improved, not only just like upgraded by upgrading a farm to having other things to help its growth, but also, for example, a stone mine to then be upgraded to an iron mine to where it can then mine both materials. So pretty cool. Like right down there in the south, this is where Otto von Bismarck's going to really excel later in time, is right down there by the mountains. So starting here and being able to build it up might not be that bad after all, but we do need to be able to at least stay up above the competition, which we'll see in just a little bit. And then of course if we don't, then we become a nation or a civilization that's lost to time. So that'll be interesting. Alright, we're discovering pottery. Those are things we'll be able to make in our workshop. So the game right now is kind of guiding us towards those things. Build the basics, then build things to enhance those basics, and then continue to build things, amenities for your cities and or enhancements for your farms and mines, so that way you can expand those too. So again, a little bit of, I don't know, it feels like Hearts of Iron to me, where it's not always about expansion. Sometimes it's about upgrading. But I do like how the upgrades are like physical, you know, like physical things that we can put in these buildings. Oh, look, we have some rhinos there. Yeah, the landscape looks really good. I like zooming in on it and actually seeing how things look. I'm actually going to care where I build things within this region, too. So each of those regions, you know, then you get multiple zones. So that's going to be a very cool thing, too, that you can build within those predetermined zones. So if you capture somebody's territory, you know, they might have a bunch of different zones there that are useful for later on. Right now we've got an area of 2 apples there, so like 2 fertility out of 4, but lots of iron. So eventually that Brandenburg region will become our mining region, and we'll start with stone and stuff there and eventually work up to minerals and metals and all sorts of things. Okay, so we've discovered more caches, we've now claim no more regions. We see there's a lion, a lot of dangerous animals here, hyenas, and cool that they're all kind of accurate to where you'd find them in real life. You know, like elephants are probably going to be more towards the plains and areas where you would find them in real life, and then polar bears will be, you know, like in forested areas and colder areas, not in the middle of a desert.
Your advisors approach you in confusion. A local tribe has provided 2 stories of their origin, but your scholars question the veracity of both. The first founding myth tells of a great prince born from a wild beast. The second tells of a foreigner who came to save the land. What should they require?
All right, so yeah, then we can choose different things with these different tribes to increase our relationship with them, or steal things from them like technology or weapons, and then give it to our troops to make free military units. For me, I think the best thing to do at the start is at least be diplomatic with them and try to keep them happy, so it's one less thing to worry about other than the enemies out there who might scout you out too. Once they find you, then of course they know where you are and can start putting pressure and or rushing towards your territory to try to block you by building their own cities. So we'll see how that goes. We can also rename our units. That's very cool. So you can rename scouts to like Scout 123 or whatever, Pioneer, or whatever historically accurate names you want to give them or whatever it may be. So very cool.
Scholars from a nearby tribe hurriedly seek audience with you to beg for your help. Their latest works and studies are being decried as magic and an affront to the spirits which protect their people from peril. They disagree and believe there are those in power within the tribe that would support their work, but refuse to come out of the shadows without your support.
So a lot more diplomacy right at the start, which is pretty cool. And it's neat that it's all mysticism at the beginning and like all sorts of like these traditions and superstitions that defy logic, which I hope if you keep these nations alive long enough, it'd be really cool if you could grow with them and then use them to enhance your own rather than assimilating with them. Right at the start too, we can only build 3 other cities, so we can settle, you know, our main city and then 2 others, and then eventually we can go on and capture more through military means. And then of course there's other ways to do that. Now this game also has some specialists like in Civilization, where we can then put them to work in our cities as kind of leaders of industry. So you can put somebody to work on the farms or in your areas that generate research, or put them on to work on other things, and we'll go over that as soon as we cross that bridge fairly soon. Now right now we're looking for all the things that we can build in these cities, so you can see just like in Civ, you can either choose to build like a farm or a logging camp, or you can choose to build a military unit, but you gotta do one at a time. So there's a queue for those types of things, and you can also expedite too, which is something I didn't know during my first playthrough. Now this is literally my first playthrough. I did like what I saw, but again, this was only an hour versus what we got in Civ 7, which was 3 hours, directly comparing my experiences at Firaxis when I flew out there in just a few weeks ago in Baltimore versus just a few days ago for Los Angeles. Now, this was a really cool opportunity to take because I definitely wanted to play both of these games, and to play them early allows me to directly compare what ARA will be when it releases literally in a few weeks versus Civ when that'll be coming out next year. So hopefully with all the feedback we gave the folks at Civ, they'll be able to make something a little more different and appealing to those who had some pretty valid criticism, although it seems like a fun game and I'll like to play that with friends. But also the same can be said with this game too.
The nations of the world become more connected. Illustrations of nature's many flowers are treasured by commoner and leader alike. To display the diversity and splendor of the world's plants in one garden would be a great undertaking, but would
For the nation that
sow
created
unity
it.
and appreciation
Okay.
for the nation.
Well, let's plant those seeds. Okay, so we got goals for each act. So we got to be the first to build the hanging gardens. That's like the main goal here, or the library. So you can kind of go down a few different great works, or like monuments or triumphs, or whatever you'd like to call them. Of course, they all call them different things, but all in all, they're like wonders, you know. But very cool that it's something we can build that could give us a benefit, like the Great Library. Look at that, polar bears out there. Look at how dangerous these wilds are. That's very cool. It kind of is a way to artificially yet realistically limit how far people can go right at the start, too. You could be blocked by animals. Your scouts could be attacked, so you got to go around.
Sighted young man approaches your advisors. He bows deeply before formally asking to be taken on in their care as an apprentice. His tribe's elders explain, that the request is an immense honor, and that the young man would be in your nation's service as long as you provide him.
So I do really like
education,
how
food,
there's
and
quite a bit of
housing.
diplomacy and like different pathways to go right at the start. It does remind me a bit of, you know, I haven't played too much of like Crusader Kings, but it does remind me of that a little bit with making some of those choices. So that's very cool. And I like that there's a few different nations that we're working with right at the start, and that they could be potential enemies or barbarians, that kind of thing. Now, another thing, too, is that there is a cap to our military forces as well. So I was just checking down there, like land forces, sea forces, and apparently air forces, too, although that's not unlocked until later. But it would be neat if there was an early type of quote-unquote air unit, like I don't know if this is historically accurate, but the Chinese using like kites to put people on giant kites to then fly them up into the air to kind of scout out where the enemy may be. I don't know if there's any accuracy to that, but if there is, it'd be an interesting unit to give the faction controlling those kites like a little bit more information on the forces around them or something like that. So now you can see there on the left side our quality of life is going up, and yeah, that's exactly what the tutorial is telling us about. We're not doing too bad. Like 50 or higher is really good. Obviously the more the better, but you can also have a city struggle for a while, especially when you first set them up. They're going to be at a disadvantage because, of course, they're not making all the things that they need to for themselves, but then you can try to give them things from other cities to make them happier. Like those amenities I mentioned. You can have a factory at your primary city, kind of cut them off at the pass of the things that they might need by preparing a bunch of food for them right at the beginning, and maybe having that ready for them, or tools to be able to, you know, benefit their farms, so that way they don't have to be behind for so long. But once you've maxed out a city too with all the things that it can do, and it does look like you can rename these cities as well, you know, you got to either focus on your city helping other cities and settling your empire, or the city has to be focused on itself and its defense or defense of the empire, or, you know, by building troops, that kind of thing. So always one more turn. This is certainly a one more turn type of game. So now we're getting ready to train military units. We'll probably be going with spearmen here, but of course archers very important too for their ranged attack. And in this game, the military units, this is a big thing. This is huge, and I'm going to explain this now as I understand it a little bit more now. Units can't necessarily be retrained or refitted or whatnot. Once you've deployed a military unit, that's it. And you also need to build multiple military units to make formations. You can actually build, like, well, individual squads or whole battalions, and you can have them create shield walls with arrows and such behind them. And once you've deployed them, that's it. You can't, like, bring them back to refit or be part of a battalion. In other words, if you send out a bunch of spearmen to go out and just kind of clear out enemy forces or animals somewhere, and they become very experienced and they heal up, I don't believe you can bring them back to your city and then make them a part of an army in the future. Once you deploy, that's it. And so it's kind of a thing where, you know, maybe you can have them link up in the field and do operations next to each other, but they're not part of the same army here. But yes, this is the most important part of this game here, is all of the information on our nation and comparing ourselves to the other nations. So we have our benefits as a leader, we have our benefits as a nation, like our religion, our national or civil civilization's religion, that kind of thing. So very important, very unique modifiers for later in the game. Okay, so now we're going to build some logging camps here and get more materials up. The basics are here. Every game would have this, right? Every game, whether you're playing Old World or a Humankind or any sort of civilization builder, or hell, even just like a caveman city builder like Dawn of Man, is exactly what you do. Is you start with your farming and your logging and your house building, and then you get your city up large enough to where then you can defend yourself and take some of those people who exist and turn them into defenders of that city, or attackers or scouts or whatever it may be. Very cool coastline here too. I believe there are options to make maps separated by an ocean if you'd like to as well. So if you want to do a one-on-one and kind of have your own continent to explore, you can definitely do that there. Here we're actually taking some turns to make different things to try to plug them in. I'm seeing how the baskets work. You can not only make things, but then you can expedite their creation too.
Without people to call it home, your nation cannot reach its full potential. Your citizens, their dreams, and their efforts are paramount to progress. The call for you is clear. Build your nation up and bring your people forward.
Nice. Okay, so another goal then. gain 10,000 population too. So many different goals with many different benefits. Not bad. So now we're going to build a logging camp as they instructed. And we're also going to be training a settler. At a certain point, you can go off the path of the tutorial, which is exactly what I did because I wanted to explore other things. And I didn't know if I'd be able to come back to play more of this game or chat with the developers or whatnot. I had the option to chat with the devs or play more on my own, and I'm glad I chatted with them because I did find out that there's rarities too here in this game. You can see here the different paragons, where I didn't notice that the different colors are actually different rarities.
Eastern Han Dynasty Chinese inventor of
So this guy here was a paragon of paper making, and the paragons are exactly who you're going to plug into some of these different roles. So you have domestic advisors, military advisors, and you can always switch those. So you could pop your first leader in, let's just call them for now. He's an engineer, so we'll plop him into just like the chief advisor for now because he's kind of the only one we got, and then can specialize a little bit later and move them around. So eventually those folks will be your farming leaders or advisors, and they'll be working on your Department of Agriculture, basically, and then your Department of your military, your defense, that kind of thing. So they all got some bonuses that really can help out making those later masterpieces, which are the key of this game. I cannot stress how important it is to eventually start making masterpieces, which are very slow, things like sculptures and artwork and whatnot, and then putting them into a building like the palace, which, if you have a monarchy and build a palace and all that, you can then expand upon taxing your people and then also taking more or building more cities, and that's a very cool thing. So very good way to be able to make more of your own nation without having to conquer too. Okay, so the logging camp's going to take a while. The training of a settler would take a while too, and more events. We got a lot of events.
You receive a concerning message from the healer of a nearby tribe. There is a malaise spreading among their people, and it appears to be accelerating with more and more of their people falling to illness. They ask you for your aid and support.
Aid and support in this time of need. So we can definitely do that. Very nice that we're keeping the fellow tribes happy. Hopefully they help us out in the future. All right, this is the most important screen in the game. I've said that a few times, but that is number one there. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it's all about that prestige. And very often, the developers have said a lot of people who play, every first couple of times they play, especially on normal, they are falling towards the bottom. But the goal is to try to be number one by the end of each of those acts and not fall by the wayside. So, your first time playing with tutorial on normal or easy or whatnot, you might be towards the bottom, and that's totally fine. And some nations are certainly at a disadvantage that they're going to be towards the bottom, but you don't want to be in the final three. So, there's 9, first 3 are eliminated, second 3, and then it's kind of a final showdown. Now, another cool thing about these nations that get eliminated, when somebody is about to fall, you can either conquer them when they're weak, or you can wait until the game basically decides that they're going to be like a ruined nation, like they're going to collapse. Their empire will fall, and then their nation has like a bunch of ruins. So either you can conquer them as they're weak and like capture them while they're alive, or you can wait for their nation to fall. And if you do that, then you can basically destroy all the barbarians in there. All their people will become like raiders and barbarians because they're desperate to survive. And you can go in there, kill all the barbarians, which will roam around and become a big problem. Think of it as like a giant zombie outbreak. Once a nation falls, then all those nations that remain are going to have to deal with all that unrest from those people who are then going to be looking for a new life, maybe via thievery or whatnot. And then, of course, you can conquer those ruins of their previous cities, and there's big benefits there, too, like maybe masterpieces or other things like that. So, very cool that you can either choose to finish off an enemy or blockade them and then finish off the rabble of their, forces that become rebels, essentially, or bandits, and then go in and clean up and not have to do as much militarily. So, that's a very cool option, too. I thought that was a very cool move, and thought that was awesome that, in other games, like somebody's buildings just collapse, all the troops die, and that's it. Like, I don't know, Rise of Nations or something like that, where when someone gets wiped out and their city center is dead, everyone just kind of has a heart attack and they disappear. But this makes more sense that, in times of chaos, a nation that would fall, those people would still exist, become refugees, and possibly either try to get into other towns or become thieves and whatnot. So here we also have a little bit of trying to plug in some of these advisors too. They want us to assign an expert. So we have our paragons who will be plugged into the city like we saw before, and then we've got our experts. So here they're more specifically being plugged into the different regions of a city, but as I mentioned before, they could be plugged into the different aspects of a whole nation. So like, for example, agricultural advisor versus somebody running a farm. So just to specify that there are paragons and there are experts, and they can both go towards buffing those things. So you can put an expert on a farm and then also have your paragon benefit on, like, I don't know, somebody who discovered irrigation or more things about fertilization, that kind of thing. Whomever else they may have historically accurately in the game. Very cool. Another weird thing, too, is that it is not limited to, like, a culture. So if you play as Germany, or if you play as, like, Otto von Bismarck, you're not going to only find Germans. So that mixes it up a little bit. It's got that, humankind thing where suddenly you could just have a Chinese, a Greek, and a French advisor in your German or your French nation or whatever. So it's just cool that it gives you a much more broader part of history where it's more rare that way. Like it's more, like if it limited it to actual history, you could only do so much. So this makes it a little bit more broad on what you could do. Just like the same in Hearts of Iron, where if you're playing as Germany in 1939, you could just be like, you know what, let's head on back and just reinstate the Kaiser, that kind of thing. It gives you flexibility that way. And that's what's cool about Hearts of Iron, is that you don't have to just do everything that Germany did in the Second World War. You could just make changes that didn't really happen but could have historically happened, like they're feasible. So here it kind of makes it so that way, sure, Germany could have, I don't know, recruited some well, maybe not an ancient Chinese architect, but at any time a nation could, like, have somebody live there or move there or be kidnapped or whatever crazy things happen, and then be forced to work on crazy projects and things like that. So I don't know. I like that. It mixes it up. If you don't like it, I don't know what to say, because it's basically going to be the same thing with just a different portrait, I guess. The devs could just do more research on each of the different accomplishments. But I don't know. Here's just kind of neat. And I like the rarity system, too, because you never know what you're going to get. Look at this. Another nation we've discovered. Crazy.
It seems the son of the tribe's chieftain is getting married, and everyone in the nearby lands are invited to the celebration. Along with the desire for your presence to participate in the revelry, there is a humble request in deference of your wealth and resources to contribute.
All right, well, let's go ahead and just give a little tribute to the wedding, and that'll be fine, I suppose. Yet another nation that we're working with. It's crazy how many there are, and how much we've explored already. It's quite a bit of the map, actually. And the map does do all those things of, like, looping around, like you would expect from something like Civ or Hearts of Iron. Okay, so here is the very important military part, where things are broken down via squad or battalion. Unfortunately, it might be a little hard to see, but it does go back to what I was saying about, like, having to pick predefined formations where it will take a lot longer for you to make all those troops, but they'll be that much more powerful. You could just deploy a few squads here and there to go clear out bears and hyenas and whatnot, and then disband them later. But it is much more beneficial to research better units for the time period that you're in, and then put them into a siege wall formation, or a wedge formation, or a line formation, and do with them what is better for their unit type. It's kind of rock, paper, scissors. So if you're in a wedge formation, archers might be a better plan. If you're in a line formation, shields and spears, or anybody to deal with cavalry might be a much better option for you. So I might actually click on it here at some point as we're kind of learning for the first time. But there you go, with the assembling formations with, like, vessels and then aircraft too. So very cool that you can actually pick a formation for your aircraft. But to be completely fair, all of these units could reconfigure at any time. I find that to be a little restrictive, and I don't... That's the way I understand it at the moment. I hope that changes, because at any moment, aircraft, fighters should be able to change their formation. Ships should be able to change their formation in time. And armies should be able to go back and refit, where, if a bunch of infantry, like World War II infantry, spot a machine gun position and take some losses, they could fall back, have a tank join that group, and then they could have combined assault on that position. Those troops then could, tactically come forward and throw some smoke grenades, then the tank flanks around, fires at the bunker, that kind of thing, or the machine gun position, and there you go. But it shouldn't require that unit to go without a tank, which it just means that you'll have to attack from different zones. There hasn't been much that I've seen on the military aspect yet, of the game. I have looked around a little bit, and, you know, it looks cool. The animations look cool, but tactics for military are different. They are interesting. They don't have always the biggest payoff, but also, you know, not every nation is going to benefit from the military. But it's definitely in here, and it's not like something they're discouraging. They're just putting more effort towards building nations, because it is a building game versus like conquering, which, you know, is one way to do it, but you still need to be able to build and lead to be able to span the test of time. So we are growing very slow with our lack of farms and things like that, but animal husbandry has come along and does allow us to make things like cured meat now, which is an amenity which will make people even happier, and that will boost that population, which is our goal. And so it's not necessarily about city size, but it's more about amenities and happiness, and when people are happy and well fed, they'll do they'll get down and jiggy with it, and that population will, you know, go up. Another settlement, dude.
Into the settlement, a blacksmith
I think I got lucky here.
Inspects their weapons with interest. With a soft smile, he offers to demonstrate a new type of metalworking unique to his people in exchange for tools and supplies.
Well, let's see. I think we're going to choose the first one. Yeah. All right, so we'll benefit from that. So now we got multiple goals too. We'll need to continue that logging camp, training a settler, and then we'll need to figure out those formations as well. And yeah, that's something that I really want to experiment with a little bit more, as well as masterpieces. Those are some things that I learned about, but haven't yet had the full time to do. And honestly, to build a military and to build a palace, those should take thousands of years, you know, of like actually getting all the pieces in place to then start building those things. The research, the resource gathering, the training, and the eventual construction, or, you know, the building of these armies. So we're going to head back. We did take out those hyenas there, or whatever it was, whatever animal was there we took out, and now we're going to head back and heal. Now, healing does work by staying stationary. You don't have to fortify or anything like that. There is an option for healing, but they will heal over time on their own too. You can either highly focus on healing, or it'll be a passive thing, it seems. And there's also options to fortify and be more defensive that way. Now, the fortification will work to where the enemy could attack you once, then your fortification is broken, and then you have to face them one-on-one. But there are ways to infinitely fortify, or make it so the enemy has to attack multiple times, that kind of thing. Now we're making masterpieces. We're making a book, and who are we going to do that with? Our bookmaker. So we've already started on our first masterpiece, which is something that will get us up in the prestige line. And prestige, of course, is generated in several different ways, but very cool that it is one of those things that's not always, it's not just a structure. It could also be a grand painting, or like in this case, like the world's first book. And people will be blown away by that. Blown away. Now, what do you guys think of the avatars, by the way? We're certainly seeing a lot more of this civilization-style animation and, like, characters. I don't think these ones are as cartoony, though. They certainly have a little bit of that feel. But it doesn't seem as much, definitely not as much as Civ 6. And a little less than what we've been seeing in Civ 7. I don't mind it, honestly. I think it's okay, especially if they're going to be animated. You could go with the portrait or a picture of somebody, but I don't know. Seeing them move at least is a little interesting, because they'll at least show you body language when they're mad, which is kind of funny, especially if you're, you know, really irritating them and you're like, "Tee, I'm going to take your city now." And then, you know, you anger Cleopatra or whoever. Funny that way. All right, we're going to go deal with that polar bear and see if we can clear out all these dangerous lands around us. Yeah, that's a really neat thing, how your lands will be really hindered by creatures like that. I mean, seriously, like, they'll be stopping you from expanding, and so you got to take care of business. I'm glad that it's not all just barbarians. Another thing that I really liked about Civilization 7 is that there were natural disasters and river flooding, and I hope this game eventually has something like that as well, where earthquakes maybe make new resources appear, or flooding will change the flow of a river, or volcanoes will erupt and change some things as well. It doesn't have to change the world, but it would be interesting if it destroyed somebody's city or did some damage. So that'd be an interesting aspect that, of course, could take place over thousands of years. Right now we're in ancient history, so it will take a little while, you know, to see each of those. But right now I think we're about to enter our 50th turn, so we are very quickly going through and getting there. All right, and now we've researched archery. Now, another thing to note in this game is that if we go on to a new age, anything we haven't researched from the previous age, we might leave behind forever. But there are new ways to discover those in the future. Like, for example, with rope making, you could discover rope making very early, and that'll help you with a lot of the things to do with, like, fishing. But then later on, there's other research projects, like, for example, let's just say sail making, that will also unlock ropes, but it'll take more to research in the future. That might not be exactly how it is laid out, but it is the general premise that there's many different ways to research things or get ahead. So staying behind and researching everything could be good, because then you'll be more diverse and robust with the things that you can do, or you can speed ahead and get things that other people don't have, that's in the future that they won't have access to for a while. So that's certainly a tactic as well for how you'll do things. So yeah, now we're going to build prestige by building triumphs. So that's another thing we could build. So not only can we make great works with our paragons, like physical things that you could hold in your hand, but then also giant buildings, like, for example, the hanging gardens and the great library, those types of things. So very cool that we have multiple options for that.
Tribe's farmers are fascinated by your nation's ability to track celestial events and predict the shift in seasons with such accuracy. They ask if you'd be willing to share your knowledge with them.
More of sharing knowledge. I like to be friendly in this first playthrough too. Again, the Germans are more industrious and then military focused later in the game. But in retrospect, I want to go back and play as a nation that can definitely do agriculture and trading and anything to do with, like, seafaring and navigation that way. It seems a little more, especially early game, beneficial when you can keep an eye on everybody else. And when they switch to Tier 2, you have some units ready to take on those barbarians. Again, we're making things like baskets. These are our amenities that we're giving our cities, so that way they can be a little happier and thus a little more productive. And again, those things are finite, so you can always trade other leaders for that too. When I started to meet other traders, other nations to trade, the trades with them are a little limited because there are usually not too many things that you've made yet that the other nations want. But then eventually you can get things like pelts or gold or jewelry, and if you're making enough of that, you can trade that with them and they'll find it valuable. So there certainly is a way to get ahead by doing diplomatic trades with everybody and trying to trade for the things that you don't have with the things you do have that they really want, and then you can give those things to your city. So literally trading things like ropes for a fur and then giving that to your cities. They might really like the fur that you're importing, and then that'll help the city grow too. So a lot of different ways to do things here. A lot of different ways. So yeah, now we're still in ancient history. The first thing will be the Bronze Age. There you go.
You've come into contact
We've now
with
discovered the
foreign nations.
Aztecs, which is cool. So then we can start trading with them shortly. One of the things that the AI does here, and you see this in every game, where they try to go for the open borders and the immediate trading with you. Either they're immediately hostile or they want to stomp all over your territory and, like, trade stuff with you, which is cool because at least you don't have to butter them up a little bit before you start doing things that are useful. You don't have to give them gifts. At least that's what I've seen so far, is that everybody seems to be pretty easy to chat with, but it might depend on the nation. And when you start with 9 of them, you know, that's a lot to try to go and find. We're going to start, speaking of finding, we're going to find a city now. We're going to found a new city, and we're going to build a gathering hall there. Our main city has something called the Great Hearth, and the smaller cities will have something known as a gathering hall. So they won't do things as efficiently as your main city, but I think maybe eventually you can move your capital. There might be ways to do that. That might not be the case, but I could also see it working that way, where you could build a Great Hearth and deconstruct one somewhere else and relocate your capital. Although that's speculative. I'm not sure about that for sure. Oh, look at that. That's where Gamescom is going on. Cold right now. Awesome. Okay, so we're building that city, and now we can build 2 of 3 cities, and then we can start doing things like fishing here, because we're on a beautiful coastline. And I wanted to settle here exactly because of that. And we'll start making things like feast to feed our people, and then we'll start going down the line of, yeah, look at that. Money and food we'll throw into there. So cool. So yeah, we'll go down the line of making those things and trying to feed our people to build that city and make it stronger. Again, they pretty much always start out around 50 for those goods on the left side, but that can quickly deteriorate if you don't have those things. And there's your disadvantage, is not making those things yet. And that's another goal for later on. And it looks like they, yeah, we built a second city. The goal is to increase max city cap. I don't think you can actually do that until you go down something like Book of Laws and then reform your society, your, you know, different types of government types. I don't think there's a way. All right.
First contact established
Oh,
with an unknown.
yes. Now we're friends with the Egyptians. Well, at least neighbors. Oh, it looks like at the start, too, there are a few options to denounce them or to irritate them. And look, the French, too.
A new power arises in your world.
So we're distrusted at the start. That, even though that's far the way to the left, right before war, I feel like everybody's pretty chill, and they do reach out to try to build a relationship. They don't just be like, I'm mad, and then go to war. But this might be in the case of Joan of Arc. She's kind of invaded Mongolia right now. So, you know, she's kind of like in the midst of a war. So that might be the fact that she's already... Oh, wait, that might not be Mongolia, but whatever. Anyway, look, she's in a military campaign right now, so perhaps the fact that she's at war makes her more distrustful rather than that being the default. But it does seem to me that most people wanted to trade and be friendly, even if they were distrustful. Then they reach out for trade, you say yes, and then they're cool with you. Okay, so here's all the things to keep track of for prestige, and that is basically what's generating that prestige for us, so your military can gain you prestige, your government, science, that kind of thing. So very cool that, you know, if you want to turtle, you can basically build a military and a wall and then start building masterpieces, and then everyone's going to try to come after you in order to destroy that stuff. But that looked cool, though, for that siege of all the camps.
You'll receive a message from the tribe sharing grave concerns about raiders. Apparently, your envoy witnessed them firsthand when they themselves narrowly escaped an attack on their return home. The distraught tribal
Their
leader
seer has
says
pointed them to
their seer
us.
has pointed them to you for support.
I love these little city-states, too. They always look so cool and unique. They look like something out of Star Wars. And there's your proposal, too, yeah. Everybody seems to try to do that right away. But then again, you know, Joan of Arc, right in the start, is wearing the suit of armor and is more historically known for, you know, military conflicts. But I don't think it always has to go that way. And I'm happy that it does not, because, you know, knowing that somebody was just going to go, you know, the moment you see Joan of Arc and they're playing as the AI, you know not to trust them and they could be military. So, always good to mix it up. Lots of cool things we could build. We got a watchtower there, which helps our security in a region, gives us like a bonus for defending if they enter that region. And then, of course, we've got a lot of different things to build in this, like, era, the ancient times. But imagine all the things that'll be available later on. So it's going to be a very diverse thing that you can build in all your regions around a city, and the zones within the first region too, and then assigning specialists to that. So very cool that you have your capital city, its regions, and then other regions that are like suburbs of that get a little bit more powerful. Very cool. More productive, more crafting, more of everything. It's good stuff. Okay, we got our apothecary there, workshops. I think we're going to go for maybe some military stuff eventually, and or change the queue on some of those things. We might cancel and come back and build some other stuff. Who knows? Okay. Oh, yeah, and that's our friend, actually, the neighbors, not the Mongolians. I forget who he is because I can't click at him in the moment, but one of our first early friends. And that guy, I think, was in second place. The one in orange on our right. Another cool thing I like is if you have noticed, I don't know if you have, but if you click on something like a farm and just sit there for a little while, the camera will very, very slowly rotate. So it gives kind of a 3D perspective to everything, although, of course, it is 3D. It's more of a top-down game that way, but at least it kind of gives you a drone view of anything that you're building. So cool. They give you a lot of great details in these tutorials, too. But as usual, a tutorial is very basic and not really giving you the best things to do in the situation, but just telling you what to do in a situation. Might not be the best, but it gives you one of the options to do so. Okay, well, now we have achieved the unachievable. We have entered the realm of the Bronze Age. We have done it. I'm very proud of all of you. We've done it. And if you've just clicked to the middle of this video and you haven't watched the whole thing, what are you doing, goofball? You get back to the beginning there and watch how we built this glorious nation. I don't want to hear what game is this, what nation you're playing as. You know damn well you should watch the whole video. What are you doing? Huh? Look at this guy. All right, yeah, that's right. Roll back. We'll see you in a little bit, pal. You always get somebody with those. Alright, but anyway, now we're starting to do some good manufacturing, some good trading. I also feel like we spread out quite a bit, but I feel like, on the other hand, this is very good because there's plenty of regions between us and our second city for us to be able to capture. Right next door to each other is good for defense, but then also you want diverse materials.
Envoy arrives at
Oops,
your capital,
accidentally opened
sent
the
to share a message from their leader. They believe that your fields seem to be suffering
dev
from
tools.
poor
Oops.
soil management. They offer advice on how to manage crop production.
There we are.
in
Shaka
exchange
from the
for a
Zulu.
portion
The
of
Zulu are like in second place right now. They're doing very well. They're very much towards the top of the list. Alright, we're going to keep on picking on the polar bears. We're going to keep looking at things like gems and meteorites. These, of course, are like things that eventually could be amenities if you can mine them or take advantage of them at the time. So those are other things that are kind of more permanent or more impactful because it's not just like a one-time trade or a one-time deal. You know, you can do multiple things with that, and that's cool. Very much like that. And of course, you can give that to any city. So again, if you get clay pots from a trade with a leader, you can then send that to any city. It doesn't have to be like the closest one to your board or anything. Options. We got options. Alright, I think we're going to build that butcher shop. That's where we can make that cured meat or cured fish. So if we start salting fish here on the coastline, that'll take advantage of that. I was actually looking for that. I remember I was looking for like a fishing dock or something that I could build, but I'll need to actually claim not the shoreline, but the territory that's out at the water in order to do that. So I could also imagine that maybe later in the game we'll be able to build oil rigs or something that we can maybe offshore mining of some sort. So claiming the water will be important too into modding for the future. And if this is going to be their day one work, then some of the other things that they could add down the line is not necessarily more nations, but perhaps different leaders of those nations or different ways to do things that are already in the game. So instead of it being kind of like a new civ and then learn that one and then that's pretty much it, I think there's going to be other tools. Now, I hope they do that because it'll be really cool to see other nations and to fight against them, and for people who are going to be rather basic with it, like I will be. You know, I want to pick a nation, jump in and learn it, and kind of learn what makes it different and fight against the AI and use those advantages. And then there's going to be other people who are going to want other things to enhance the nations that are already there or make them play differently. And there are DLCs that will do that in previous games, other games out there that either kind of flip the script and add new game modes or add new nations or new things to the maps or different ways in which resources or other things can be gathered and or played with. So very cool, and certainly something that's going to make it stronger. So yeah, hopefully in the future we see a lot more for this game, and I'm excited to see what they will do in late game stuff for both Civ and for ARA. I'm really curious to what will happen when we get towards the Industrial Revolution. Power is in the game as well. You know, electricity will have to be managed as a commodity, just as you would with food and iron and other things like that. So you have to produce more than you're consuming, otherwise you can't do anything. So, or take advantage of that. So, really want to see how steam, electricity, gunpowder, oil, and then eventually like armor and tanks and aircraft and things like that work. And then super weapons, or weapons that are like cruise missiles and large ships that should be able to attack across the map and not just like, you know, do it offshore battleship bombardment, that kind of thing. So hopefully, you know, it's going to take a while, but when we play ARA for real, we're going to see that in the game, and then we're also going to see that in Civ, and we'll have to directly compare the later games too, because I feel like the games are always similar at the start and always similar towards the end, where, you know, you're going to get super weapons, you're going to get armor, you're going to get helicopters and stuff, and that will make for bigger movement. But I think these games are really set apart by what they do with things like the, you know, their government types, how you play with the militaries, like that foundation system, and then also, of course, what will happen towards the end game. Like, do you just nuke everybody and that's it? Does, like, the Earth's ozone layer get destroyed and everyone gets vaporized by the sun? Like, I don't know. But I love looking at this farm here. I think at this point we were still talking about some things and I was asking some questions, but I do really like how the animations of these buildings play out. So I hope that when we build a factory in the future, again, going back to the Industrial Revolution, it'd be really cool to see trains here pulling in, seeing factories, you know, people walking around factories and driving forklifts and vehicles going in and out. And it is also very cool to see roads automatically built within those cities and within the regions, and then people like actually like running around. You see that one person there running to the farm, or people walking and towing carts and things like that. So really well done with like breathing life into the map, and all the rocks and stuff around the shoreline. Like a really good looking map. It definitely feels like it's not a game that's based on hexagons. Certainly it's not. And it also feels like more like regions, like as if I were playing in an actual survival city builder like Banished or Dawn of Man, where I'm building farms that are custom for the landscape there. And very cool that the game was smart enough to follow the fertility of the actual, like the actual map. Like, that's really cool. I really like the fact that they did that. And I hope to see more sprawling facilities that take advantage of something like that look unique each time. Right now, you can tell that it's just a square in the middle, and then the game filled in all the space around it. But it feels believable. And there's also bonuses to farming, too. I have forgotten to mention that there's things like corn and wheat and other things that you can find that will provide more of a bonus to grain. There's more crops that are more resilient, like maize/corn. So if you find that early, you're going to have, like, if you build it in a area with a lot of fertility, if you find it there, it's going to have a bonus on top of that. And then your specialist bonus, your expert bonus, and then your paragon bonus. And so you could really stack food high, and that's going to be a really cool thing. So there's a lot of great ways to play this, where it's not just the building aspect, but also a little bit more like the min-maxing of leaders and bonuses and modifiers that people wouldn't really expect. Just because you're playing as Germany, maybe you'll have a good early game depending on the leaders that you get, and of course the RNG of the world that you land in too. So I think that every time that you play, it's a different experience, but I need to play many times to get the experience to know how to play this one differently. But I'm very happy that, from as far as I can recall, it certainly is playing along the lines of, old world at the beginning, a little bit of humankind with the modifiers of the paragons and the experts that you can find from different cultures, but then also is very much Civ with the whole having to build settlers and settle cities that way and stuff too. So yeah, and here we are jumping between like a workshop, building a workshop as well. And again, seeing all those shelters laid out and a lot of custom things built. Seems to be very sprawling. I feel like there's a lot of empty space here, but again, we are in the middle of a desert. But I also imagine that when we get later into the game, into modern eras, that a lot of this will be filled in with walls and parking lots and street lights and park benches and loading areas, and maybe there'll be a lot more hustle and bustle. Probably in the next 2 weeks we'll be seeing a lot more of ARA, and I'm really excited to see what other creators make for their whole, here's what you should do for this and what you should do for that. But anyway, these are my thoughts for ARA History Untold. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. Is this a Civ killer? I know a lot of people will say that, but is that what you expect from this? Speaking with the devs, they're big fans of Civ, and they gave ARA History Untold a lot of feedback to Civilization. And when people did a playtest for ARA History Untold, it seems like a lot of people who were working on Civ were also testing this out and giving awesome feedback as well. So it is a beautiful thing to see the developers of ARA History Untold and Civ 7 and that other game, I always forget the name of it, Monopoliopolis, or whatever. Look, there's all these city builders and these Empire turn-based 4X games that are coming out, and it's not these guys versus those guys versus those guys. They all want everybody to succeed. At this point, Civ is, I guess, ancient history. It goes all the way back to the beginning of the, Empire builder. So I hope that everybody's got some big success in the future, and that I want to see everybody score a dub. I want everyone to succeed, and I hope these games are the best they can be, and then everyone chooses their favorite, but not that there's a good or a bad one, just one that people prefer more, so we can get more of these games, because competition breeds innovation, and innovation will breed competition. All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Share with a friend, subscribe, whatever. I'm out. Take care. I'll see you soon.